Don't give up, you know it's true. You gotta do what you wanna do.
Hello, welcome to UPSC Gangsters. This is Arjun Aryan. I'll be taking you through the editorial analysis for the date 8th October from the Hindu newspaper. Alright, so let's get started. The first editorial analysis, the heading of the editorial says, "A second chance for the HPV vaccine. As India's human papillomavirus vaccination program gains strength, lessons from an earlier trial must not be forgotten." Alright, so I've taken the important points from this, and vaccination is something that is again time and again asked in the prelims examination and also in the mains examination. Alright, so the topic of vaccination of late has become very important. Alright, so do note down the points what I'm about to say right now. The first point says, after the suspension of the human papillomavirus vaccine trial in India in March 2010, this involved nearly 23,500 girls from Vadodara in Gujarat and Khammam in Andhra Pradesh. There is again movement on this front. Alright, so just remember the human HPV vaccine. Alright, so the human papillomavirus vaccine trial in India actually was done till March 2010. Alright, so it involved 23,500 girls in two locations, one in Gujarat in a city called Vadodara and in Khammam in Andhra Pradesh. Alright, so these are the two places where the trials happened, and it got suspended in March 2010. Next point. The Delhi and Punjab governments started vaccinating girls aged 11 to 13 from November 2016. In 2012, there were 123,000 new cases of cervical cancer and 67,000 deaths in India, accounts for about 25% of global cervical cancer deaths. Alright, so this is something you have to note. India had in 2012 123,000 deaths. Alright, that number you didn't remember, but you should remember the fact that there were 67,000 deaths in India. Alright, and that accounts to around 25% of global cervical cancer death. Alright, so that point is very important. So what is actually cervical cancer? It is actually a cancer that arises from cervix. Alright, so that would be affecting the vaginal parts of females. So there will be bleeding, there will be pelvic pain and all that. So it is a kind of cancer that would affect the reproductive organs of a female and all. Alright, and we account to 25% of the global cases. Alright, global cervical cancer deaths. So that is kind of alarming, right? So one nation contributing to 1/4 of the global death toll arising out of cervical cancer. So this is something we should actually concentrate on and trying to reduce the number and finally eradicating it. Next point, with more states deciding to introduce vaccination, it is important to bear in mind the lessons learned from the experience in Andhra Pradesh and Gujarat. The trial, which was suspended, came under scrutiny after the deaths of 7 children, which was unconnected with the vaccination. But investigation into the way the trial was held exposed several ethical violations. So 7 female children died, alright, and therefore the trials were actually suspended, but the deaths were in no way related to the vaccination. So this point you should remember, alright, the deaths were not related to the vaccination. So it's not right to say that there was something wrong with the vaccination thingy and therefore it was therefore the entire program was suspended. Alright, so that you have to remember in mind. and also the fact that the investigation actually found out many other ethical violations. Alright, so certain things that are not supposed to be done by human standards were done during the vaccination trials. Alright, so those things got exposed at least. The Indian Council of Medical Research, ICMR, has been the driving force behind the vaccination program. So remember, not only these vaccination things, there are a lot of other things. Alright, so this vaccination program is actually coming under the ICMR. So the Indian Council of Medical Research handles the vaccination trials. Alright, all the vaccination trials are handled by this body. So remember that, not only for the human papilloma virus vaccine, for all the other vaccines, the trials are actually coming under the ICMR. Next line, the heading says, some recommendations. We held expert group meetings with many stakeholders, including NGOs. So this is basically the recommendations that the body got, alright, for the vaccination trials. We held expert group meetings with many stakeholders, including NGOs, and looked at the scientific evidence from the World Health Organization, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, other countries that have introduced HPV vaccine, and from within India. We took into account the current global recommendations. We also looked at experiences of other countries in this region, such as Nepal, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka, which have introduced the vaccine, says Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, Director General of ICMR, and now World Health Organization Deputy Director General for Programs. Alright, so this one is according to her. Alright, so how so these, and the other point you have to note in this one important point, there are other countries that have introduced this vaccine too. Alright, our neighbors. So Nepal, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka have introduced these vaccines. Alright, so that you should remember. And we actually used those experiences. Alright, so whatever happened in their countries, that also we have taken note of while we are gonna implement this in future. Alright, the National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization is considering the introduction of HPV vaccination as part of the Universal Immunization Program, says Dr. Swaminathan. So, under the Universal Immunization Program, we are trying to include HPV vaccines, alright? So for now, remember the Universal Immunization Program. Alright, the Universal Immunization Program does not have the HPV vaccine as of now. Alright, the HPV thing is not happening as of now under the Universal Immunization Program. Alright, so that you should remember. So in future this might be very useful. As of now, alright, there might be updates in future. So as of now, if the question comes, is HPV a part of the Universal Immunization Program? The answer is no. Alright, so you will be able to eliminate the options accordingly. Alright, the HPV vaccine is offered in the private sector, and people who can afford it are getting it, but the poor who are more vulnerable are not getting it, she adds. So this is the point. This is currently not under the government dispensation scheme, right? So it is not the government that is actually selling it. So the private players are actually selling it. So to remember this point, alright? So the HPV vaccine is currently sold by the private sector, private pharmaceutical companies, alright? So the normal people are able to afford it, meaning the middle class, upper middle class, and the rich people. But the poor are left out from this, alright, and they are the most vulnerable, alright. So, of course, we have to make it available to the poor people also, because they have the major chances of getting affected by this cancer. The expert group has recommended making vaccination uptake absolutely voluntary and with the prior knowledge of and informed consent from parents. Also, cervical cancer screening of mothers accompanying the girl at the time of vaccination has been recommended. This is an important point, alright, to identify the future causes. Alright, so you remember this. While the mothers are accompanying their kids, alright, their girls, the mothers will also be scanned for the complaint, alright, for the virus. So when that is done, that will be much more easier, because separately asking the mothers to come and do a test, that is kind of something that will not happen, alright. So you cannot be covering everybody, but like, you know how you actually dispersing polio vaccines, right? So every mother, almost 99% is gonna come there, right, with their kids. So you can scan the mothers too in the easy way, right? So mothers accompanying the girl at the time of vaccination has been recommended, alright, for scans. So next point, while it may take about 25 years to see the benefits of large-scale vaccination of children, screening mothers between ages 30 to 65 will have an immediate positive outcome. So just remember the period it takes, the gestation period or whatever, of the effects of the vaccine. Alright, so it takes 25 years to see positive results. Alright, but if you like scan and all that, mothers between age 30 to 65, those will have immediate positive effects, alright, so that you should remember. Next line, this has a heading, screening with vaccination. There has been ineffective screening for cervical cancer in India. A study in 2009 in villages in Maharashtra's Osmanabad district found that a single round of HPV testing was associated with a significant reduction in the numbers of advanced cervical cancers and deaths. Alright, so just remember the 2009 study in a place in Maharashtra. There they have used the HPV vaccine, alright. So the HPV vaccine has actually resulted in a reduced number of deaths due to cervical cancer. So this is a positive thing. It means that the vaccine is actually working. A key reason given by HPV vaccine manufacturers and experts on the need for HPV vaccine is the near absence of screening in India. But HPV vaccination does not make screening for cervical cancer unnecessary. Alright? So why the HPV vaccine should be administered here, they're saying, is the screening places are not there in India. Alright, not many screening centers or scanning centers for the cervical cancer is present in India. So directly giving the vaccine is the only way. Alright, and it's the only way to prevent those deaths. So that is the suggestion in this. You have to remember the key reason. Alright, the key reason, and because of no screening centers in India. Alright, so next point, screening should go hand in hand with vaccination. Strengthening cervical cancer screening is part of the ICMR's recommendation. Earlier detection of cervical cancer is very important, says Dr. Swaminathan. According to the WHO, screening for cervical cancer should continue after vaccination. Important point to remember this, right? So we cannot do away with screening centers. So according to WHO, they say screening should go hand in hand with the vaccination. Alright, so remember that screening is very important even after vaccination. Alright, this is what the WHO has recommended. The reasons besides 16 and 18 HPV serotypes infection with 11 other serotypes can cause cervical cancer. Alright, so why the screening? Because the other serotypes, the other strains can also cause cancer. This vaccine actually targets particular serotypes, alright? The other serotypes can also cause cancer. So that is why screening should be there. The HPV serotypes 16 and 18 account for nearly 77% of cervical cancer cases in India. You have to note down these 2 points, alright? So the serotypes thingy, alright? The serotypes might be ignored if the screening is not done. So serotypes 16 and 18 and serotype 16 and 18 actually cause the 77% cases in India. Alright, so that you should remember. So serotypes are something that is involved with the cervical cancer. This also can be a prelims question. What are the serotypes? I mean, which disease does serotypes relate with, alright? So which disease does the serotype actually associate itself with? So the answer is going to be cervical cancer. So next line, hence girls vaccinated with even a quadrivalent vaccine can be infected with other serotypes. The 9-valent HPV vaccine, which was licensed in 2015, offers greater protection against HPV causing serotypes. So remember which one has the maximum protection. Alright, it is the 9-valent, alright, 9-valent HPV vaccine that has greater protection against HPV causing serotypes. Some oncologists are those people who study cancer, alright? Some oncologists from Mumbai's Tata Memorial Center feel that HPV vaccine to prevent cervical cancer is not needed in India. They cite the sharp fall in the number of cases without medical intervention, attributing it to increased awareness, particularly of personal hygiene in a few cities. Cancer registries in 4 rural pockets have not shown any increase in incidence in over 2 decades. Alright, so they are saying this is not about the serotypes and the infection and all that. Those people from the Tata Memorial Center, according to them, cleanliness and hygiene can actually defeat this sort of cancer. So have this in mind, that cleanliness and hygiene can defeat this sort of cancer. Alright, that you should remember. But this is just the opinion of those people from the Tata Memorial Center. Alright, so this is all about that, this particular editorial. Let's go to the next one. The next one, the heading says the unintended consequences of GST. It has wreaked havoc on the informal sector. Do we have a plan to deal with this? So this article is basically criticizing the GST, the way it was implemented. Alright, so most of the things are just criticism, so I have left those things out. So those things that have facts, alright, and figures with them, that have taken it down. Alright, so whatever it is, because facts and figures, they do not change and they have neutral opinion. So based on those facts and figures, you can give your answers. Alright, this will not be asked obviously in prelims and all, but mains it might be, an interview of course it will be. Alright, so whenever a question like these come up, what do you think about the GST, the way it was implemented and all that, instead of giving your personal opinion, it is always best to actually cling on to facts and figures. Alright, so when something is no longer your personal opinion, the one that is listening to you will obviously agree to it because it is facts. Alright, so let's start with it. Tax rates have been reduced on several items. Small and medium businesses with an annual turnover of rupees 1.5 crores have been exempted from tedious filing of monthly returns and have been given a quarterly option. And businesses with a turnover of up to rupees 1 crore have been given the option of paying a flat 1 to 5% tax and effectively disengaging from the rest of the GST system. Alright, so this is the first fact that is coming under this editorial. So this is something that was added additionally, alright, just a few days back. And rupees 1 businesses that have a turnover of rupees 1.5 crore below, alright, below 1.5 crores, they are actually exempted from the monthly GST filings, alright. So they can do it in a quarterly basis, on a quarterly basis. And those businesses with turnover over just around 1 crore or below it, they are supposed to they have been just given the rates of 1 to 5%, alright, totally. So the GST on exports has also been cut 2.1% till 2018. Alright, this is another thing, because many countries like Malaysia and all the other countries that have introduced GST, even Canada, they did not have the GST on exports. Alright, it was like 0%. So now the government has actually introduced 0.1% of GST on exports. Alright, so which is a welcome move, and by international standards, in lines with international GST norms. Alright, so till 2018 they are exempted. Alright, so this will help exporters tide over their current liquidity challenges. Alright, next point, what are these unintended consequences of the GST? The biggest, of course, is the havoc it has wreaked on the entire informal sector of the economy, which actually accounts for the livelihood of a bulk of the population. Time and again, so another point in this is the unorganized sector. Alright, the informal sector accounts to the majority of employment. Alright, informal sector accounts for the majority of employment, that you should always remember. Alright, so if you're going to focus your policies on just the formal sector, it's not going to work out. Alright, so the policies should actually target the informal sector. Only then you will actually get the real potential out. Alright, this is also why we have such a low official unemployment rate, because while the organized sector workforce accounts for just a fraction of the jobs, the informal sector ensures that 95% of the population earns a living. Alright, so that is why we have a very low unemployment rate. Alright, we have a low unemployment rate. And why? Because we might you would have heard the industry will slow down and all that, and a lot of layoffs and a lot of jobs have been dropping in big industries and companies. And still, why are unemployment statistics are low? It's because of the informal sector. And another fact you should remember from this is informal sector actually accounts for 95% of the employment of our population in India. So this is another fact which you should remember, which is very important. Alright, so obviously you have to focus and you have to allocate the resources in improving the informal sector. Alright, only then you'll actually kind of bear the real potential of the country. Next point, it has a side heading saying informal sector hit. It is this mass of people in the informal sector who have been flattened by the GST. The other day, for instance, at the Khadi Gram Udyog Bhavan, around the corner from the Hindu's office in Chennai, I found a woman standing with a basket of handmade dolls for delivery. Alright, this is for Navaratri. Alright, Navaratri is also the doll buying season in the south. Arguing with the store's accountant, he was vainly attempting to explain to her that he could not make payment for any supplies without the vendor's GST number, a concept this village artisan had never heard of. For this woman, Friday's reduction of GST on handicrafts from 18% to 5% is meaningless. Alright, so she has travelled all the way from the village to sell her goods to this guy from the Khadi shop, alright, and he's asking for her GST number. And she has not registered with GST, obviously, because she's from a cottage industry person, right? She's a cottage industry person, and obviously there is no internet there. Maybe even electricity is not there, but internet is definitely not there, and she has not registered with the GST. So even before registering all these people from the informal sector, from the cottage industries, the government has introduced the GST, alright, which is one of the negatives. Alright, you should have taken all the pains, and government should have sent officials to villages and all that, at least major villages, alright, where economic activity happens, alright, that is surviving on cottage industries and all that. At least to those villages, the people should have been sent and made sure that they were registered in the GST bracket, alright. So, she's not registered and she's not able to sell right now, and God knows what happens. Anyway, the takeaway from this point, the important point for us, alright, is that right now it has been reduced from 18% to 5%, alright, the handicrafts. So that you should remember. So therefore, this is why they're saying it is meaningless. She has simply lost a substantial chunk of her working capital and months of labor. And even if she gets a GST number later, what would be the compliance cost for such a person? And what kind of tax credits can she actually avail? So even if she has a GST number, she has to regularly update and all that, right? Where will she do that, alright? She should have the necessary things to do that, like a computer and an internet connection and all that. So that is not there. So how will she do that? How will she avail the credit and all? This is really out of the question, right? So these are the things that are faced by, these are the hardships that would be faced by the informal sector, especially the cottage industry people, right? Take the apparel sector. Almost the entire sector, over 2 million units, consists of tiny units, officially employing an average of just 1.5% each, usually the owner and another family member. The rest are jobbers and temporary hands who will now have to become registered vendors with the GST numbers if these tiny units are to get the benefit of GST. Anecdotal evidence suggests that a huge number of these units may either simply fold up or be forced to lay off their jobbers and tempers, or else officially absorb them as workers, which will definitely make them non-competitive. Alright, these are industries that are much more smaller. These are like a network-based industry on a small scale level, alright. So each house will be like doing all these accessory things, alright, bangles or earrings and all that, and they will be handled by a central guy who will take it from the village and sell it in the cities and all. And these people are also expected to be under the GST bracket. So again, where will these kind of people get the resources of having a computer and an internet and all that? And who's gonna keep regularly updating their GST accounts, and who's gonna see whether the tax credit has come or not, and who will regularly monthly file the GST returns and all that? So for these people it is really hard. That's what it says. Do we have a plan to deal with such massive layoffs? Do we have an alternative plan to fill the gap left by the 15% share of exports currently contributed by textile industry, for instance? Alright, so another point you have to remember. So 15% of the exports from India is from the textile industry. Alright, so textile industry, again, they're all almost small scale industries. Not every company is going to be like Bombay Dyeing, a large scale company. Everything is going to be, the majority of them is basically based on cottage industries, small scale industries. So, and they share the 15% weightage in exports from a country. Alright, so 15% of exports is from the textile industry. So when such GST compliance and all that happens, this 15% is gonna get hit, right? So last line, sometimes unintended consequences can end up being far more impactful than the intended ones. Alright, so the criticism part is over. Let's head to the next editorial. Next editorial, the heading says, in a first, gene therapy halts a fatal brain disease. Well, this is a short one. Gene therapy can hold off ALD without side effects, but with a caveat. For the first time, doctors have used gene therapy to stave off fatal degenerative brain disease, an achievement that some experts had thought impossible. The key to making the therapy work: one of the medicine's greatest villains, HIV. The disease. The patients were children who had inherited a mutated gene causing a rare disorder, adrenoleukodystrophy, or ALD. So, what you have to take from this? Basically, ALD is about degenerative nerve cells. Alright, so that you have to note down what it is for. It is a rare disorder. You have to note down because of a mutated gene. So the causes of it is a mutated gene. So if a question comes in science and technology part, what is the cause of ALD, and if the option of mutated gene is there, it is right. Alright. Nerve cells in the brain die, and in a few short years, children lose the ability to walk or talk. They become unable to eat without a feeding tube, to see, hear, or think. They usually die within 5 years of diagnosis. The disease strikes about 1 in 20,000 boys. Symptoms first occur at an average age of 7. The only treatment is a bone marrow transplant, if a compatible donor can be found, or a transplant with cord blood, if it was saved at birth. Alright, so there's elephant in that one. So, and it also affects only guys, alright, only boys. That you should also remember. 1 in 20,000 boys. So, ALD actually affects a huge population, both boys and girls. If the question comes, you know the answer to it, alright? ALD affects only boys. That remember in mind. But such transplants are an onerous and dangerous therapy with a mortality rate as high as 20%. Some who survive are left with lifelong disabilities. Now, a new study published online in the New England Journal of Medicine indicates that gene therapy can hold off ALD without side effects, but only if it is begun when the only signs of deterioration are changes in brain scans. The study involved 17 boys. The disease strikes males almost exclusively, ages 4 to 13. All got gene therapy. 2 years later, 15 were functioning normally without obvious symptoms. To me, it seems to be working, said Dr. Jim Wilson, director of the gene therapy program at the University of Pennsylvania's Perelman School of Medicine, who was not involved in this new study. One of the remaining 2 boys died. His disease progressed so rapidly that gene therapy could not stop it. The other withdrew from the study to have a bone marrow transplant. He died of complications from the procedure. So just remember, if the ALD has spread, if the gene mutation has spread really high or really beyond a point, the gene therapy will not work. That also have it in mind, alright? So in advanced stages, will the gene therapy work? No. At really advanced stages, it will not work, alright? The study opens new avenues for using gene therapy to treat brain diseases, said Dr. Theodore Friedman, a gene therapy pioneer at the University of California, San Diego School of Medicine. Many think the central nervous system is intractable and unapproachable, he said. This study proves them wrong. So under the subheading where it began, the research began with the determined mother, Amber Salzman, who was an executive with a PhD in mathematics in GlaxoSmithKline. So the GlaxoSmithKline, you know that company, right? So in 2000, her nephew was diagnosed with ALD, a disease she had heard of only in the movie Lorenzo's Oil. Alright, so she was the one who actually started trusting the gene therapy and did all these things for her nephew. So eventually it did work out. She had her 1-year-old son tested and found that he had the mutated gene, as did another nephew. She looked into Lorenzo's oil, a difficult dietary regimen featuring a specially designed oil. Alright, so this is about the ALD and gene therapy. So remember, from the science and technology perspective, alright, the points which we discussed. Next point, next editorial, the heading says self-managing abortions safely. Let's get started. It's about abortions, alright. It's about access to the facilities that aid in abortion. So abortion has been a hot topic even in the United States after the right-wing party has come to power there. They are actually pro-life, they say, and they are completely against abortions and all that. So, let's see how abortion thing is going on in India. There are a lot of facts in this editorial too, which will come in handy for comparative analysis. Let's get started. The first point says, medical abortion is a method of termination of early pregnancy using a defined combination of drugs. Recognized as a very safe technology, it is preferred choice of women across the world. Medical abortion was approved by the Drug Controller General of India in 2002 as a Schedule H drug. It is not an over-the-counter medication. Over-the-counter medication in the sense, you just cannot walk in to the pharmaceutical joint or the drugstore and get it, just like how you get your Crocin pain relief or paracetamol. No, you should have a prescription. Alright? Now note this first point under this editorial, that MA was actually legalized, was approved by who? The Drug Controller General of India. So many would not have heard such a thing exists in India in the first place. Alright, so don't worry, anyway, it has come here. Drug Controller General of India. So remember that they are the ones who actually give approval to drugs for sale. Alright, so 2002 they have given the approval, and it was a Schedule H drug. However, it is estimated that annually between 6 to 8 million women attempt to terminate their pregnancy themselves by sourcing the drugs from chemists without a prescription. 6 to 8 million is a huge number. Alright, it's the population of entire New York. Alright, so annually the study says 6 to 8 million females actually source these drugs, alright, from drugstores without prescription to handle the abortion themselves. Alright, despite abortion being legal in the country and concerted efforts being made by the public health system to improve abortion care, it is worth asking why women take recourse to self-use of MA. Alright, MA is medical abortion. Medical abortion to terminate an unwanted pregnancy. Even though all the facilities are available, why the women are doing something like this? Maybe the society is to blame. Alright. Next, for women in India, access to abortion has been marred by extreme stigma, lack of awareness about its legality, unavailability of safe services near the community, and high costs charged by providers. Alright, so these are the reasons why women are resorting to self-care. So if a question comes, why women actually go for self-MA process, these have been the important reasons behind why women are going for self-medication. Alright, so continuing, unsafe abortion practices were the third largest contributor of maternal deaths in India. Please note this point, another fact. Alright, so unsafe abortion practices were the third largest contributor for maternal deaths in India. Okay, so it is pretty serious. We have to take this into consideration and make it right. However, over the last decade, women who cannot access safe and legal services have moved to self-use of medical abortion, perhaps a better option than resorting to life-threatening means. Next subheading, from the field. Medical and public health experts alarmed by the use of MA by women provide anecdotal evidence of the high number of women reaching health facilities with incomplete abortions, post-abortion complications. Alright, so experts are actually alarmed by the self-use or by the patients they get as a result of self-use. Alright, so after going through those patients that have used the MA on their own, medical abortion drugs on their own, they are actually surprised or more kind of alarmed to find out that there are a lot of complications they have ended up with. Alright, usually incorrect self-use of medical abortion leads to excessive bleeding, as in spontaneous abortions, and requires completion of an abortion by a trained provider. Alright, this can lead to excessive bleeding. Please remember that excessive bleeding is possible because of the use of MA, medical abortion on their own. So there is no doubt that women who receive medical abortion under supervision of a trained provider are less likely to have any complications at all. But it is important to note that complications following self-use of medical abortion are far less and less severe than those encountered during the earlier decades. This is shown in the drop of maternal deaths and injuries due to unsafe abortions, and primarily by the virtual disappearance of women presenting themselves with peritonitis, septicemia, septic shock, damaged intestines hanging through a perforated uterus, severe complications that require major abdominal surgeries, and even removal of the uterus. Alright, all these things are at least not happening, they are saying. Alright, excessive bleeding and all that is happening because of self-use, but the really life-threatening things, alright, those direct consequences, the much more dangerous consequences, those have been eliminated. Even the self-use is actually able to restrict these kind of things. So they're saying just to imagine if it is done by a trained professional, it can be entirely avoided. That's what they're saying. Given the nature of MA, medical abortion, the World Health Organization task-shifting guidelines on abortion recognized that self-assessment and self-management of medical abortion can be empowering for women and help to triage care. It suggests that if women have the information and access to a healthcare provider, they can safely self-manage medical abortion and assess completion of abortion in the first trimester, even in low literacy, low resource settings. Alright, so WHO is saying this is actually kind of empowering women, the WHO's view. So please have it in mind. This is actually empowering women, nothing wrong in that they are saying, but they have to educate females about how to actually self-use the drugs, alright, how they can use the drugs in the proper manner, what are the dosages and all that. So they get the particular training of how to do or know how or who to approach, alright, to get the training and buy the medications for themselves and use it. It will be really wonderful, and it would actually prevent a lot of hardships for the women community, even in the low literacy and low resource rich countries. Alright, that's what the World Health Organization has to say. Next subheading says access to safe abortion. We need to realize and acknowledge that women's self-use of medical abortion, not because they do not want safe and legal abortion services, but on account of our health system not yet offering them the services they need. Till we can make women-centric comprehensive abortion care services available across the country, we need to accept the inevitability of women choosing the self-use medical abortion. Given the rapid progress in technology, is it not our responsibility to break down legal, operational, and societal barriers for access to safe abortion? Alright? So it's not because the women do not want the proper care. No. Anybody would say they do not need proper care, first class treatment and all that. No. It is just that they are not having the proper access to it, and they have the social stigma related to it, that she's going to abortion clinic and all that. So the government should actually take kind of steps to answer these kind of things. So why not have a general clinic and have a separate abortion center within that very clinic itself, so that if the female goes, people might not think that she's going for abortion. Alright, so that is their right. So else if she goes there, they will jump to a conclusion saying that she's gone for abortion clinic and all that. So that is also there. So with the age of advanced technology and all that, we have to take the responsibility to ensure that females have the right access and easy access to abortion clinics. These include expanding the base of legal providers of abortion to enable wider access to safe services, allowing for training of providers only on medical abortion, withdrawing unnecessary restrictions on chemists that lead to unavailability of medical abortion drugs, and training certain cadres of service providers to effectively manage post-abortion complications. This is the time systemic hurdles are crossed to make any of these possible. We must at least ensure that women who self-use medical abortion drugs have access to adequate information and systems for supportive care, including identifying danger signs, access to health facilities if required, and most importantly, post-abortion contraception. Alright, so please remember all these things. These are the things that we should take care of. These are the things that should be in the front line. In the sense, these are the things that should be accessible to women. Alright, gently. This is in lines. These suggestions are in lines to the WHO thing. Right? So WHO wanted the technical know-how, the information, the access to facilities and all that, the information basically to pass on to women. So even the low income countries, this might work, they said. Alright, so this is all about the 8th October editorials. I will see you in the next editorial analysis video. Alright, till then, take care.